EC warning its latest stance ahead of the scheduled consultation with political parties on the new voters register can derail the country's democracy. More as civil society organizations consider legal action to force the Electoral Commission to reverse its latest decision as they accuse the EC of engaging vendors as IT consultants.
The persons that the EC is holding up as consultants are actually vendors. The persons that are being held up as the people advising the EC that what they need to do is a totally new system are the people who are selling them the systems.
We've got details of that and more here on Top Story. And Top Story is brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready and Gasm, the nation builder. I am Gifty Andoh Appiah. General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu-Nketia, is tonight lashing out at the Electoral Commission, saying its latest decision has the tendency to derail the country's democracy. Director of Electoral Services at the EC, Dr. Sribo Kweku, yesterday told Evans Mensah that a meeting of commissioners and directors of the commission decided to execute plans to compile a new voters register starting April 2020. This is in spite of a directive by the EC's own Eminent Advisory Committee for further consultations to be made on the decision. Listen to excerpts of that interview.
We developed a proposal as the directors with respect to the timelines and activities for the year 2020 from January to December. So we met the commission today. I did a presentation.
So these will be the directors of the commission, met the commissioners today?
Exactly. Presented the timelines or the program for the year. And we met the commission and we have now finalized the program.
And what does the program include? I mean, particularly people would like to know about the voters register.
It's now decided that we are starting the registration on the 18th of April and end on the 30th of May. We are going to use the clustering system as we used in 2012. So we are targeting around 32,000 polling stations. So we are acquiring about 8,000 machines for BVRs. So what we want to do is that one machine will be in charge of 4 polling stations. So it will go to every polling station. So it will go to the first polling station for 10 days. Depending on the number, even if it is 1,000 people who are going to register, on the way to be registered by 100. So when they finish the 10 days, they will have 1 day rest. Then they'll move to the next polling station or registration center. They also do 10 days. Then they move to the next place. So 10 days, 10 days, 10 days for the 4 will be 40 days. Then in between, 1 day will be 3 days. That will be 43 days. So after you have finished with the 43 days, if there are areas that we have report that some people couldn't register, then we use some days to do the mop-up. So that by end of June, our register will be ready for adjudication, duplication, and what have you. So when that is done, then we'll go for exhibition. Once exhibition is done, then we'll go for nomination and we'll have the election.
What about the equipment that you need for this? When do you hope to have them ready?
We are targeting and planning by our procedure that all things being equal, by the end of March, the equipment should be in, that the BVR kits should be in. Therefore, the BVDs they can wait because they will be used during exhibition. But the BVR machine that we use for the registration by the end of March should be in.
Does that mean that the contract has already procurement, etc. processes have been concluded?
They have not, but I know they are concluding. So maybe this week or next week it should be.
But what happens to the resistance then, the objections that some of the political parties have to this?
We will continue to engage them. But because elections time bound, if we were to say that we want them to, whatever be the case, this year there should be registration, either limited or general. And if you want to go for limited, you need to buy additional equipment. So we roll out your processes. Once nothing stops you, you go through and carry it through.
For those who still have objections, even after the engagement,
since 92, we have never had an activity without objection. By the end of the day, the results will justify why we did it. So we don't expect that everybody will agree with us before we move forward. It has never happened before, and we don't expect it to happen. But the most important thing is that let us continue to explain to people what we are doing. And once we're able to do a good work, people will say, oh, we didn't even understand that's the way it's going to be. And I always say that anybody who believes in one man, one vote should move along with us, because that's where we are headed towards.
I heard you mention your constitutional mandate.
Because we will be held responsible when we fail to carry out our constitutional mandate.
On the back of the constitutional mandate references that you've made today to back the decision, what about those who will say, well, they want to challenge this in court?
I pray that we don't get there, but we cannot stop anybody from exercising his or her constitutional right.
You mentioned you continue to consult the advisory committee that you set up. In fact, asked that you do so. Have you written to the parties to tell them when you'll be consulting?
I've heard so, but I've not seen the letter. I've heard that they have scheduled a meeting on the 30th of this month. I've heard it, but I've not seen it. I don't doubt it.
But the purpose of that meeting will be what? Because
to explain why we are doing what we are doing.
Okay, this is just about explaining.
Yes, not to tell them, to advise them whether to do. This is not to do or not to do. No, but the reason why we are doing what we are doing.
So that's Director of Electoral Services at the EC, Dr. Sribo Kwaku, talking to Evans Mensah yesterday. Now, the Inter-Party Resistance Against New Voters Register has since accused the Electoral Commission of bad faith. Spokesperson of the group, Bernard Mona, says they will continue a series of actions to further drum home the need for the EC to beat a retreat. He spoke on News Desk on the Joy News channel.
It means we'll resume our mass public activities that we have planned. We shall be engaging the public. We will soon even be engaging the media. We will want to tell the story as it is. We want everyone to know that the Electoral Commission has set in motion a process to bastardize our democracy, and that they will compromise the peace and stability of this nation by their intransigence. The disrespect and disregard the Electoral Commission has shown to their own eminent advisory committee, the chief and the overlord of the Ashanti Mines Council. It's also evident in the manner in which they are going about things. It is only this Electoral Commission that wants to say that consensus is not part of the game. We want to assure you that no amount of bullets or bombs has been able to defeat the will and might of the people. We shall confront the Electoral Commission with all the legitimate rules that are permitted under our laws to ensure that we do not bastardize our nation's democracy.
So that's Bernard Mona there, a member of the Inter-Party Resistance Against New Voters Register there. Well, aside from the political parties, up to 18 civil society organizations also raised separate concerns and combined their forces to pile pressure on the Electoral Commission to back down. Vice President of Imani Ghana, Kofi Bento, also alleges that the EC's IT consultants are also the vendors. Listen.
The will and might of the people. We shall confront the Electoral Commission with all the
These are challenges we have with the Commission.
The will.
Well, we're unable to bring you that sound now, but let's get on the line and speak to Mr. Kofi Bento. Let me acknowledge his presence there because we've been checking some of these allegations with the Electoral Commission. Mr. Bento, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, regarding the earlier allegations that you made, my colleague, Kwesi Parker-Wilson, has been talking to the EC to get them to verify some of these allegations. So, Parker, what do we know at this point before we bring Mr. Bento in?
Okay, so, Gifty, our sources at the Electoral Commission tells us that it's not true that the consultant for the Commission are the same individuals, the vendors actually, and that they have already given the data center to Persol. They are the company managing the data center now, and it's not true that any of the vendors are part of the consultancy, and that only 4 vendors currently are going through the process. They are done with what the Commission calls the technical process. That is where they demonstrate the equipment. And Gifty, you should know that these vendors are the ones going to supply the Electoral Commission with the biometric verification devices and the BVRs as well. And so, according to the Electoral Commission, they were there to demonstrate the machines to the Commission, in fact, the robustness of the machines, and that they are done with that process. Currently, what they are doing now, and they are quite hopeful that by the end of next week, they'll be able to select the vendor for that particular supply. And so they are now going through the financial process. They are done with the technical process and now going through with the financial process. So by the end of next week, they'll be able to select the vendor who will supply the Electoral Commission with the biometric equipment. So it is not true that the consultants are the same people who are going to supply the Electoral Commission with the biometric equipment.
So essentially what the Electoral Commission says is that they have yet to choose the vendors in the first place. That they have yet to choose the vendors in the first place.
Oh, yes, the procurement processes are ongoing. Yeah, okay. So they are done with the first phase. Next week will be the end of the second phase. And at the end of the second phase, they will know who will now supply the Electoral Commission with the equipment. Well,
we can now, Mr. Bentel is on the line and he will respond to the EC's reaction to his allegations. But quickly, hear him out when he spoke earlier this afternoon.
The will and might of the people, we shall confront the Electoral Commission with all the legitimate...
Well, sincere apologies for that. Mr. Bentel, you've heard what the Electoral Commission has to say about your allegations. They're saying that, in fact, they don't even have any vendors at the moment. The processes are still ongoing. Hello, Mr. Bentel. Where we're trying to get Kofi Bentel, who is the Vice President of Imani Africa, we get him to respond to what our findings are review from the Electoral Commission. Earlier, Mr. Bentel had alleged that the EC is using the IT consultant working for them as vendors at the same time, or the Electoral Commission says that is not true because at the moment the processes are still ongoing. They have yet to choose a vendor. We had Mr. Bentel on the line to respond to this as well. At the moment, we've lost him. We'll bring him back on the line. In the meantime, listen to General Secretary of the Opposition National Democratic Congress, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, who is saying that the latest posturing by the EC ahead of a scheduled consultation can derail the country's democracy. If you'd recall, the commission, the commissioner's own committee that they put together had directed or had issued a directive that they should hang on and go through a lot more consultations, but as we speak that has not been done. Well, before we listen to Mr. Asiedu Nketia, let's go back to Kofi Bentel, who is on the line. Mr. Bentel, thank you for your time once again.
Thank you.
Before we lost you, I was asking you to respond to what the EC had to say about your allegations. They say at the moment they're still going through the processes. They have not chosen a vendor yet.
Right. Look, there are a number of facts, and I think we should focus on those facts. Okay. Fact number one is that the EC removed consultants STL, from their system. So STL was not working for them anymore. The EC replaced these consultants with Fairgreen. So Fairgreen, at least since May 2019, has been working within the EC system. We are aware that the EC's present consultant on procurement and other things is Dr. Yaofori J. Dr. Yaofori J is Chief Technology Officer also and co-owner at Fairgreen. The point I'm making is that if the person who is advising you, and we've all seen Dr. Yaofori J doing his work for the EC, speaking to the fact that we need to procure a totally new system for the EC. And Dr. Yaofori J also works with Fairgreen, which clearly is working within the EC and is connected to many vendors. I say there's a clear problem there. All right. So what they want to do in future or whatever, it's another matter. But that's the point about engaging. I would want the EC to sit in a room with me and explain. Maybe there's an explanation for why the person who is working on the side of the vendors is also working on you. If you have a situation like that, then clearly he will advise you to change everything. Because clearly there will be some sort of conflict there. He has benefited from STL's removal and he will benefit if the EC changes everything. I mentioned earlier also that the EC's own internal assessment in 2016 gave the recommendation that they should continue to improve their system. They should use the continuous improvement process they've been using all these years. Okay, and then you have a new consultant who says, no, let's scrap everything. I'm not saying he's the only person saying that, but I'm saying that at least we know he has been one of the vocal persons held up as a consultant, okay, and it is worrying. Where are the answers? And that is what I think the EC should be interested in doing. We are Ghanaians, we are citizens, we are asking questions. They shouldn't sit back and say, we will do whatever we want to do. You owe us an explanation. And that's the point.
So you're saying that apart from you do agree that the EC has not chosen a vendor as yet, but already what you're saying is that already these vendors work within the EC, and Fairgreen is that particular vendor.
Please, I said, confirm from the EC whether Dr. Yaofori does not also work with Fairgreen, and also confirm from the EC whether Fairgreen has not provided services to the EC.
Well, I think that at this point that is not in doubt. We do know that Dr. Yaofori works for the EC, but what we're trying to clear out is if you indicated categorically that the IT consultant is a vendor, then you need to elaborate a bit more on that.
Madam, I'm simply saying something which I don't think we should be worrying our heads about. You are confirming that Dr. Yaofori works for the EC, and I'm saying that Dr. Yaofori, you confirm, also works for Fairgreen, and I'm saying that Fairgreen has been engaged within the EC system, either as a consultant or a vendor or both, and is working there. These are facts that we know. And since you asked, I've put them out. And they clearly have benefited from the removal of STL. STL, we all say they were not the best, but yes, when they were removed, one of the institutions that went in there to provide services to the EC towards the May 2019 exercise of the EC was Fairgreen. So the point is that, look, if the EC does not want to sit in a room and discuss these things and give us the answers, we'll be forced to discuss them on radio. And I'm saying it's worrying that the person who is advising you on what to buy is connected somehow to also the person who is selling. It's a worrying situation.
We'll certainly will need the EC to clear out a few things here, but the EC has told us, Mr. Bento, that they are currently not engaged in any process that requires a vendor. So as we speak, the EC does not have a vendor.
And I am saying that historically, towards the May 2019 exercise the EC conducted, Fairgreen was working with the EC. It's historical. So I'm saying these are things that have happened in the past. Dr. Yaofori consistently still works with the EC and also works with Fairgreen. Now, like I said, there may be a good reason why this is going on. This is why the EC must engage and answer questions from citizens who may have issues that worry them. So what they want to do in the future, I don't know whether they will take stuff from Fairgreen again or not. And I told you earlier that I did not want at this point to be mentioning names, even though I know what I know. Clearly, Fairgreen has benefited in the past from the removal of STL. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? It is a source of worry for some people that the person advising could potentially also be connected to some of the people who will be selling you things. I think that's a legitimate concern.
Moving forward, right now the EC is bent on going forward. We know that by April, they've indicated that by April they'll be going forward with it. There have been a series of demonstrations. Are you leaving it, or will you leave it at a worrying situation?
Oh, we discussed these things in the afternoon. I mean, we hope that the EC will be forthcoming in trying to convince us that this is necessary. We should spend $100 million on this exercise. If the EC is saying that they are not going to talk to anybody, they are going to go ahead. There are a number of options, and we are looking at all those options. We still hope that we can talk these things through. But let's see what they will do, and we'll also advise ourselves.
Mr. Bento, thank you very much for your time this evening. Kofi Bento is Vice President of Imani Africa there. He made some allegations earlier this evening. He's providing some more details. He indicates that Fairgreen is a vendor for the Electoral Commission, and that Fairgreen is partially owned by the Electoral Commission's IT consultant in the person of Dr. Yaofori. We've been checking with the EC. The EC says at the moment they're still going through the process. They have not yet chosen any vendor. Let me bring you back what Johnson Asiedu Nketia says. He says that he's a party secretary of the opposition NDC. He says the latest posturing of the EC, which is to go ahead with the voters register anyway, has the ability to derail the country's democracy.
These are challenges we have with the commission. I'm only praying that in December elections, they are not going to announce different election results.
But you know that you are very experienced in election. You know the chairperson has always been the one to declare the presidential. You are very experienced in election.
Whatever my experience is has to do with a commission that is credible. Now you are dealing with a commission that has serious credibility deficits. You understand? And so you should expect anything. It will not be out of place at all to expect that after the December elections, you can be having announcements from different angles at cross purposes. So, John, that is why I'm suggesting that we must deal with these problems as they happen now. People are just taking them as jokes, and then we are moving gradually to a bottomless pit. When we get there, we can get to a point of no return. And everybody will be regretting that what happened to our democracy. So that is why I'm saying that don't let us sit down to allow a certain group of people, for whatever motives they have, to derail this democracy. So that is why we are insisting that let us do things in such a manner that the results will not be affected by the integrity or lack of it of individual commissioners, because we are convinced that these commissioners have compromised their integrity.
And they've called your bluff, so they are going ahead with the register. And I know it's supposed to meet the eminent committee, the advisory committee, and someone next.
They are not calling our bluff exclusively. They are calling the bluff of civil society organizations in this country. They are calling the bluff of their own eminent committee members who were selected by the commission itself. And the list of people they are offending is growing. So they are tying a noose around their own necks. It's not about us. So we don't feel bound by any commitment we have made to tone down with our activities any longer.
So you push through the activities, the demonstration?
Sure. We met yesterday and we have reactivated all our activities, and the planning is ongoing. So we'll proceed till we get victory, because we think that there is an assault on common sense, and we must fight on the side of common sense for common sense to prevail.
Would the NDC still meet the electoral commission?
Well, we will look up to the the eminent committee of eminent persons.
Why?
We will look up to them, because it is based on their advice that they say this meeting should come on. And they called on all sides to tone down. So ceasefire cannot be one way. And we considered and said we have granted a ceasefire for 1 week.
Okay.
If the Electoral Commission cannot wait, and within 1 week they are publishing deadlines and timetables and other things.
And the modalities are all ready for the register.
It is they who are disrespecting their own committee. So between now and Tuesday, when the meeting is expected to take place, we will be reviewing the situation and we will act accordingly.
And the review will be to boycott the meeting?
I'm saying
going ahead with the
we are not there yet. You cannot preempt what a meeting, what the outcome of a meeting will be. If I know the outcome of the meeting, why would I go? So we are going to hold a meeting, and I'm sure that out of the discussion, decisions will emerge.
Whether to boycott or to still another invitation?
Well, or a third option. It's not decisions. Issues don't have to be handled with either A or B. There could be C, D, E, F.
That's Opposition NDC's General Secretary Johnson Asiedu-Nketia speaking to Kwesi Parker-Wilson a while back. Parker, you're still here. Let's wrap this conversation up with the directive issued by the Eminent Advisory Committee for further consultation on this decision. What does the EC say about this?
Gifty, the EC is quite clear in its mind that this is not a directive. And the committee, if you listen or appreciate the name of the committee, is an eminent advisory committee. So it's an advisory body. All they do is to advise the Electoral Commission. So according to the Electoral Commission, on the day they met with the eminent advisory committee, the decision taken at the committee was only an advice to go and consult with the political parties.
But not a directive.
Wasn't a directive. It was only an advice. And so on next week Thursday, in fact, the eminent committee or through the Electoral Commission has issued a statement communicating to us that next week Thursday they will be having a meeting.
Read to us what
so let me just read verbatim what the statement says, that the eminent advisory committee will meet the Electoral Commission and the Inter-Party Advisory Committee as earlier indicated, and the Inter-Party Advisory Committee is the political parties at the IPAC level. Now, it goes on to say the meeting will seek to engage with the Inter-Party Advisory Committee on the Electoral Commission's plan to compile a new voters register ahead of the 2020 presidential and parliamentary elections. Now, the meeting will be held on Thursday, 30th January 2020, and it's signed by Mrs. Sylvia Andoh, the Acting Director, Public Affairs of the Electoral Commission. And you know, the interview that Evans Mensah had with Dr. Shebo Kweku, he indicated that, I mean, this particular meeting, as we just read to our listeners, is just to let the political parties have a better appreciation of why the Electoral Commission is compiling the new register for the 2020 election. So they are just going to the meeting to only let the political parties understand the need for a new voters register. That's all.
That's the latest on that developing story. Top Story is brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready. And Gassem, the nation builder. My name is Gifty Andoh Appiah. Evans Mensah has Ghana Connect up next.